Close your eyes, and let the room around you soften. It is January of 1929, and you are a clerk at a brokerage house on Wall Street. Outside, a fine rain falls on brick and cobblestone. The ticker tape machine in the corner clicks steadily. You have a long year of posting prices ahead of you, and you do not yet know that the numbers on the tape are about to drift in ways no one has seen. Let your breath slow. Let the ticker and the rain become the only sounds. And let us begin, very gently, at the beginning. The rain has been falling since before dawn. It strikes the tall windows of the office building and runs in thin streams down the glass. The air inside carries the faint smell of coal smoke from the basement furnace and damp wool from the coats hanging by the door. You have walked 3 blocks from your boarding house on the Lower East Side, and the brim of your hat still holds small beads of water. You hang your coat on the wooden peg beside your desk. The wool is damp at the shoulders. It will dry slowly through the morning. You set your hat on the shelf above and smooth down the front of your suit. Your suit is dark gray, 2 years old, and you brush it every evening before bed. It cost you $22, nearly a full week of your wages. You pull out the high wooden stool and seat yourself. The seat is hard, and you have learned to shift your weight from time to time through the long working day. In front of you sits the large chalkboard that runs along one wall of the office. It is your job to keep the prices current. You read them from the ticker tape and write them in white chalk, row after row. The ticker tape machine sits on a small table in the corner. It is about the size of a sewing machine, made of cast iron and brass. A thin paper ribbon unwinds from a spool inside. The machine prints prices on it in small, clear letters. It is connected by telegraph wire to the stock exchange several blocks away. When a trade happens on the exchange floor, th. A price travels along the wire and appears on the tape. On a normal day, the tape keeps pace with the trading. On busy days, it falls behind. The machine clicks softly to itself. Each click is a new letter or number being pressed into the paper. The sound is steady and regular, like a small clock. You have listened to it for so many months that you barely notice it anymore. It is simply the background of your working day, like the rain or the distant rumble of the elevated train. You pick up a piece of chalk from the tray at the base of the board. The chalk is white and smooth, worn down to about half its original length. You go through 3 or 4 pieces in a typical week. The stationer on Broad Street sells them for a penny apiece. You buy a dozen at a time, wrapped in brown paper. The first prices of the day begin to appear on the tape. You read them slowly, line by line, and transfer them to the board. U.S. Steel opens at 173. General Electric opens at 212. American Telephone opens at 248. You write each name and number in your neat, even hand. The chalk makes a soft scratching sound against the dark surface of the board. Rain taps against the tall windows beside you. The light is gray and even, good for writing. On bright summer days the glare from the street can make the work harder, but January offers no such trouble. The light will remain soft and steady until midday, and then fade slowly into the long afternoon. You glance at the clock on the far wall. It is 10 minutes past 10. The market has been open for half an hour. The tape is moving at its usual morning pace. Nothing looks unusual. The numbers are close to where they were when you left yesterday evening. You earn $28 a week. You are paid every Friday afternoon, in cash, in a small brown envelope. The chief clerk hands them out from his desk at the far end of the room. You take your envelope, tuck it into your inside coat pocket, and walk home with it. On Saturday morning you pay your landlady $8 for your room and 2 meals a day. The rest their food, clothes, car fare, and the occasional moving picture show. You set aside $2 a week in a mason jar under your bed. You do not know what you are saving for. You just know that saving is what careful people do. A runner passes behind your stool, carrying a stack of paper slips. He is a boy of about 16, with red hair and freckles. His shoes make soft thudding sounds on the wooden floor. He does not speak. Runners do not speak unless they are spoken to. They carry messages between the trading room and the back office, between the margin department and the cashier's cage. They move quickly and quietly, like small ships in a busy harbor. The ticker tape clicks on. You post another set of prices. The numbers drift up by a fraction here, down by a fraction there. Nothing moves very far. It is the kind of morning that makes time feel slow and even, like the rain outside. You think about lunch. You will walk to the automat on Wall Street at noon. A plate of baked beans and a slice of pie cost 15 cents. A cup of coffee costs 5 cents. You usually have the same thing. The food is not remarkable, but it is hot and it is fast and it costs what you expect it to cost. You like things that cost what you expect them to cost. The rain picks up slightly. It falls harder against the windows for a minute or two, then settles back to its steady patter. You do not look up from the board. Your hand moves automatically, chalk in fingers, writing numbers you have seen 100 times before. The ticker clicks. The rain falls. The office hums with its own quiet rhythm. Mid-morning, the office manager walks through the room. He is a man named Mr. Whitaker, thin and precise, with a mustache he trims every Sunday. He carries a clipboard and checks things off as he walks. He pauses briefly by your board, glances at the prices, and moves on. He does not speak to you. He rarely speaks to the clerks directly. He speaks to the chief clerk, who speaks to the senior clerks, who speak to you. You dip your chalk in the small dish of water at your side. Dipping the chalk makes the lines wider and sharper on the board. The water evaporates quickly, leaving the chalk dry again in a few minutes. You learned this trick from the board boy who worked here before you. He left last spring to take a job at a bigger firm down the street. You never learned his name. The customer lounge down the hall begins to fill around 11 o'clock. You can hear the low murmur of voices through the wall. Men come in to watch the ticker and talk about the market. Some are regulars who come every day. Others appear only when the market is moving. They sit in leather chairs and smoke cigars and watch the numbers on the board. Some of them have a great deal of money. Others have very little. You cannot always tell which is which by looking at them. A bell rings softly in the corridor. It is the elevator from the lobby. A moment later you hear footsteps approaching. The door to the office opens and a broker walks in. He is wearing a dark overcoat and carrying a leather briefcase. He shakes rain from his hat and hands it to the boy at the front desk. He walks past your board without glancing at it. He is on his way to the partner's office at the end of the hall. The ticker tape continues its steady click. You post the 11 o'clock prices. The market has moved slightly higher since the opening. Not by much. Just enough to notice if you have been watching all morning. Most people would not notice. Most people do not watch prices all day. You stretch your back and roll your shoulders. You have been sitting for nearly 2 hours. Your wrist is slightly stiff from holding the chalk. You set the chalk down and flex your fingers. The ticker clicks on without you. It does not stop for anyone. It keeps printing as long as the market is open, and sometimes for a while after. You look out the window for a moment. The rain has settled into a fine, steady drizzle. People pass on the street below. Their coats pulled tight, their hats pulled low. A horse-drawn delivery wagon rumbles past, its wheels throwing up small arcs of water from the gutter. The city moves at its usual January pace, slow and damp and unremarkable. You turn back to the board. The morning stretches out before you in a long, even line of numbers. There is comfort in the repetition. Each price is the same shape as the one before it. Each hour fills at the same steady rate. You do not need to think about what you are doing. Your hand knows the way. Footsteps sound near the inkwell at the end of your row. You do not look up. You recognize the gate. It is one of the brokers from the trading floor. He comes down to refill his fountain pen once or twice a day. He always takes his time about it. He likes to stretch his legs and look at the board for a minute before going back up. You hear the soft clink of his pen touching the edge of the inkwell. Then the quiet sound of the nib dipping into the ink. He always fills it slowly, as if he has all the time in the world. You keep your eyes on the tape. You do not speak unless spoken to. It is one of the first things you learn. He speaks, but not to you. He is speaking to another broker who has come up beside him. Their voices are low, the way men speak when they do not want the whole room to hear. You catch only fragments. Something about volume. Something about January. And then one phrase, clear and quiet, that reaches you where you sit. This year could be a lively one. You do not look up. You keep writing. The chalk moves across the board in its steady rhythm. The ticker clicks on in the corner. The rain continues its work against the windows. You do not know what he means. You do not know what a lively year would look like. You have only been here 18 months. The market has moved up and down in small ways during that time. Nothing that anyone would call lively. You dip your chalk again and post the next price. The number looks the same as all the others. The tape keeps clicking. The rain keeps falling. The office goes about its business, slow and steady, on an ordinary January morning. The words stay with you for a few days, soft and unformed at the back of your mind. You do not think about them directly. They simply sit there, like a folded paper in a coat pocket, noticed only when something shifts. The weeks pass. January turns into February, and February turns into March. The rain is still with you, but it is a different kind of rain now. It falls lighter, and the days are longer. The light through the tall windows arrives earlier each morning and lingers later each afternoon. You notice these things because you sit beside the window and you have time to notice. The ticker tape machine is running longer each afternoon. In January, it usually stopped printing within 10 or 15 minutes of the closing bell. By late February, it ran for half an hour after. Now, in the last week of March, it sometimes runs for an hour or more after the market has officially closed. The tape piles up in a coil on the floor beside the machine. The office boy comes around at the end of the day and carries it away in bundles. You do not know where it goes. You have never asked. You post higher numbers every week. Not by much. Not dramatically. Just a little higher each Monday than the week before. U.S. Steel, which opened the year at 173, now posts at 185. General Electric has climbed from 212 to 228. The numbers move slowly, like water finding its level. You do not think about what it means. You just write them down. More customers come into the office now. The customer lounge down the hall, which was half empty in January, fills up most mornings. Men stand around the ticker and watch the tape go by. Some of them take notes in small notebooks. Others just stand and watch. They smoke cigars and talk in low voices. The air in the lounge is always thick with smoke by midday. You recognize some of the regulars. There is the man in the brown suit who comes every morning at 10. There is the older gentleman with the white mustache who always sits in the same leather chair by the window. There is the quiet man in the gray spats who never speaks to anyone. You do not know their names. You know them by their coats and their hats and the way they hold their cigars. A bell rings in the corridor. The elevator from the lobby. More footsteps. Another customer. The office is busier than it was 2 months ago. The runners move faster. The chief clerk makes more trips to the partner's office. The ticker clicks on, steady and even, a little faster than it did in January. The shoeshine boy from the lobby comes up one afternoon. He is a small boy of about 12, with dark hair and a serious face. He works the shoeshine stand in the building lobby, shining shoes for a nickel a pair. You see him every morning when you arrive. He always nods to you. You always nod back. He comes up to your board and stands there for a minute, watching you write. You do not look up at first. You can feel him standing there, small and quiet, his shoeshine box at his feet. He asks you how a person goes about opening an account. You pause with your chalk halfway to the board. You lower your hand and turn to look at him. He is standing very straight, as if he has been practicing the question. You tell him you do not know exactly. You tell him he would have to speak to someone in the customer department. You tell him it costs money to open an account. You tell him most customers put down at least a few $100s. He nods. He does not look surprised. He just stands there for another moment, watching the numbers go by on the tape. Then he picks up his shoeshine box and walks back toward the elevator. You do not see him again for the rest of the week. You think about him sometimes, when you are posting prices. You wonder how much money he makes shining shoes. You wonder how long it would take him to save enough to open an account. You do not know the answers. You just keep writing. The rain falls softly against the windows. It is a spring rain now, warmer and lighter than the January rain. It does not have that sharp, cold edge. The air in the office smells different too. Less coal smoke, more dust and ink and the faint green of things starting to grow outside. You can almost feel the season turning, slow and quiet, through the glass of the window. The margin department has been busier lately. You notice because the runners carry more papers back and forth between the trading floor and the margin room. A margin account is a kind of account where a customer puts down only part of the money for a stock and borrows the rest from the brokerage. The stock itself serves as security for the loan. If the price falls far enough, the brokerage can ask for more money. This is called a margin call. You have not seen very many margin calls yet. You have heard about them. You know what they look like on paper. You do not fully understand how it all works. It is not your job to understand. Your job is to post the prices. The rest happens in other rooms, behind other doors. You see the papers go by. You see the runners hurry. You see the margin department door open and close. That is all. The ticker clicks on. You post the afternoon prices. The numbers are higher again. Not by much. Just a little. Every week, a little higher. The chalk wears down a little faster than it did in January. You go through 4 pieces a week now instead of 3. The stationer on Broad Street still sells them for a penny apiece. Some things do not change. You take your lunch at the automat as usual. The line is longer now. More people from the financial district, all talking about the market. You hear fragments as you wait. Something about a radio company. Something about airplanes. You do not pay close attention. You order your baked beans and your pie and your coffee, and you sit at your usual table by the window. The food still costs 20 cents. It still tastes the same. On the walk back to the office, you pass the shoeshine stand in the lobby. The boy is there, shining a man's shoes. He is working quickly and carefully, his rag making a soft snapping sound as he buffs the leather. He does not look up. You walk past and get into the elevator. The afternoon is busy. More customers come in. The ticker runs late again. You stay at your board, OS. Ting prices, your chalk moving steadily across the dark surface. The office hums with activity. Voices. Footsteps. The constant click of the ticker. The soft scratch of chalk. Around 3 o'clock, a woman comes into the office. You notice her because women do not often come to the brokerage. Most customers are men. When women do come, They are usually accompanied by a husband or a brother. This woman is alone. She is middle-aged, perhaps 50 or so, dressed in a dark coat and a sensible hat. She carries a small leather purse. She walks slowly, as if she is not sure where to go. She stops just inside the door and looks around the office. Her eyes pass over the board, over the desks, over you standing with your chalk in your hand. A clerk from the customer department comes out to greet her. He shows her into the small office down the hall. The door closes. You do not see her again for nearly an hour. You go back to posting prices. The ticker keeps clicking. The numbers keep moving. You forget about her for a while. Then she comes out. She walks slowly down the corridor toward the elevator. She stops for a moment beside your board. She looks at the numbers. You cannot tell what she is thinking. Her face is calm, almost expressionless. She speaks to the clerk who is walking with her. Her voice is low and clear. She says she is from Brooklyn. She says she has only ever owned 2 shares of railroad stock before. She says her husband left them to her when he died. She says she has never bought anything on margin before. The clerk nods and says something you cannot hear. He holds the elevator door for her. She steps inside. The bell rings. The door closes. She is gone. You stand there with your chalk in your hand. You look at the numbers on the board. The numbers are the same as they were a minute ago. Nothing has changed. And yet something feels different. Quietly. Slowly. Like the way spring arrives. You do not notice it happening until it has already happened. The ticker clicks on in the corner. The rain falls softly against the windows. The office settles into its late afternoon rhythm. You dip your chalk and post the next price. The number is a little higher than the last one. Just a little. The thought of the widow stays with you for a few days. Not strongly. Just quietly, like the way a stone sits at the bottom of a pond. You see her face sometimes when you are posting prices. You hear her voice saying those words about the railroad shares. And then the moment passes, and you go back to work. June arrives. The rain is gone for now. The days are long and warm. The sun comes up early and stays late. The light through the windows is brighter and whiter than it was in spring. You have to adjust your position sometimes to keep the glare off the board. The customer lounge is full most days now. In January, you could always find an empty chair if you walked down the hall. Now the chairs are all taken by 10 o'clock. Men stand along the walls. They crowd around the ticker tape machine. They watch the numbers go by like men watching a slow river pass. You hear more voices now. The lounge used to be quiet. People spoke in low murmurs. Now there is a constant hum of conversation. Not loud. Just more of it. More people. More words. More stories. The ticker tape clicks on, a little faster every week. You can hear it from your desk, even with the lounge door closed. It has a different rhythm now. Not the steady tick-tick-tick of January. Something quicker, more uneven. Bursts of activity followed by quiet stretches. You do not need to look at the tape to know when the market is moving. You can hear it in the machine. You eat lunch at the automat as always. The place is busier now too. More men in suits, more clerks, more people from the financial district. Everyone seems to be talking about the market. You hear fragments as you stand in line. One day you hear about a barber from down on Fulton Street. He bought some shares back in the spring, the story goes, and now he has doubled his money. He still cuts hair, people say, but he talks about stocks all day long. His customers come in for a shave and leave with tips. You do not know if the story is true. You never can. Now if these stories are true. You hear them at the automat and you hear them in the elevator and you hear them on the street. They float around like dust in the sunlight. Some of them might be real. Most of them are probably bigger than the truth. That is how stories work. The weather grows warmer. By mid-June, the office is hot by midday. The tall windows let in the sun, and the steam heat from downstairs lingers though the furnace is not running as strongly. The air in the office grows thick and still by afternoon. It carries the smell of cigar smoke and sweat and ink. You go through 2 callers a day now instead of 1. The laundry costs an extra nickel a week. You pay it every Saturday morning to the Chinese laundryman who picks up from the boarding house. He wraps each collar in tissue paper and writes your name on the package with a pencil. He never says much. He just nods and takes the bundle and the coins. You hear another story at the automat a few days later. This one is about a taxi driver who quit driving. He put all his savings into the market back in March, the story goes, and now he has enough to live on without working. He spends his days at the customer lounge of a brokerage house, watching the tape. You think about this story as you walk back to the office. You try to imagine what it would be like to not work. To spend your days watching numbers go by. To have enough money that you did not have to earn more. It is hard to picture. You have worked since you were 16. The idea of not working feels like the idea of not breathing. A distant rumble shakes the window for a moment. The elevated train, 3 blocks over. It passes and the quiet returns. The ticker keeps clicking. The chalk keeps scratching. The office goes about its business. The office manager hires 2 more runners in the 3rd week of June. They are both boys of about 15, thin and eager, with new shoes and clean shirts. They start on Monday morning. The chief clerk shows them around. He shows them where the margin department is. He shows them where the back office is. He shows them where the customer lounge is. You watch them from your board. They walk too fast. They talk too loud. They have that new job energy that wears off after a few weeks. Why? Oh, you remember feeling that way yourself, once. A long time ago. It seems longer than 18 months. The runners carry more papers now. More orders. More confirmations. More margin documents. You see them go by your desk a dozen times a day. Their feet make soft slapping sounds on the wooden floor. They are still breaking in their shoes. The ticker runs later and later each afternoon. By late June, it sometimes runs 2 hours after the market closes. The pile of tape on the floor grows higher and higher. The office boy comes around more often to carry it away. He makes 2 trips some days instead of 1. You post higher numbers every week. U.S. Steel is over 200 now. General Electric is past 250. The numbers climb slowly, steadily, like the temperature. You do not think about what it means. You just write them down. One afternoon, you walk down the hall to the water cooler. You pass the margin department on the way. You have passed it 100 times before. But today something is different. The door is at the end of the corridor, where it has always been. But you notice that the room next to it is now part of the margin department too. The wall between them must have been taken down. You can tell because the door frame is wider. There is a new name on the door, painted in gold letters. It says Margin and Loan Department. The door is closed. It is usually closed now. You used to see it open sometimes, back in the spring. You used to see the clerks working at their desks inside. Now the door stays shut most of the day. You hear voices behind it sometimes, low and busy. You never see who is in there. You stand there for a moment, holding your cup of water. You look at the closed door. You wonder how many people work in there now. You wonder what they do all day. You wonder why the door is always closed. You do not ask. It is not your place to ask. You are a price clerk. You post numbers on a board. What happens behind closed doors is not your concern. You walk back to your desk. The chalk is waiting for you. The ticker is clicking. The numbers are moving. You pick up the chalk and you post the next price. The number is higher than the last one. Just a little higher. The afternoon wears on. The sun moves lower in the sky. The office grows warmer. The runners come and go. The sea. Customers talk in the lounge. The ticker clicks on. Everything moves at its own slow, steady pace. Like the summer itself. Long and warm and full of light. You do not know it yet, but the rooms are getting bigger. The doors are closing. The numbers are climbing. And somewhere down the hall, behind a closed door, the margin department is growing. Quietly. Steadily. One day at a time. The closed door at the end of the hall stays in your mind for the rest of June and through July. You pass it every day on your way to the water cooler. You never look directly at it. You just know it is there, closed and quiet, with its new gold letters. August arrives. It is the hottest week of the summer. The heat settles over the city like a heavy blanket. It is there when you wake up in your boarding house room. It is there when you walk to work. It is there when you leave in the evening. There is no escape from it. The office is warm by 9 o'clock. By noon, it is hot. The tall windows let in the sun all morning. The steam heat from downstairs is gone for the summer, but the building holds the heat. The air grows thick and still. It carries the smell of cigar smoke and damp wool and ink. There is an electric fan in the corner of the office, near the partner's door. It moves slowly back and forth, pushing the hot air around. It does not cool anything. It just moves the heat from one place to another. You can hear it humming, low and steady, all day long. The ticker tape machine clicks on as always. But something has changed. The tape is running late. Not by much at first. Just 10 minutes or so. The prices you write on the board are 10 minutes behind what is actually happening on the exchange floor. It does not seem like much. But it is different from January, when the tape kept pace almost perfectly. The customers do not seem to mind. They stand around the ticker and watch the tape go by. They smoke their cigars and talk in low voices. They wait patiently for the prices to appear. No one complains. No one rushes. Everyone has grown used to the slower pace of summer. You wipe your forehead with the back of your hand. Your shirt is damp at the collar. You changed it once already this morning. You will change it again after lunch. The laundry bill is higher in summer. You pay it without thinking. It is just one of those things. You walk to the water fountain by the front desk. The water is cool, but not cold. You drink 2 cups and walk back to your board. The chalk feels slippery in your fingers. Your handwriting is a little less neat on hot days. You try to keep it steady. You try to keep everything steady. The delay grows longer as the week goes on. On Tuesday, the tape is 15 minutes behind. On Wednesday, it is 20 minutes. By Thursday, it is running half an hour behind the actual trading. The numbers you post are half an hour old by the time you write them. You do not fully understand why the tape runs late. You have heard it explained, once or twice, that when there are more trades than usual, the telegraph wires cannot keep up. The machines can only print so fast. When there is too much activity, the queue builds up, and the tape falls behind. A horse-drawn delivery wagon rumbles past on the street below. You can hear the hooves on the cobblestones, sharp and quick. The sound fades as the wagon moves on. The fan keeps humming. The ticker keeps clicking. The office stays hot. The sun moves higher in the sky by midday. It strikes the windows directly now, turning the office into a kind of oven. The light is bright and white and heavy. You squint a little at the board. The chalk numbers seem fainter in the glare. You shift your stool slightly to the side, out of the direct beam. The customer lounge is still full every day. The men still stand around the ticker. But the mood is different from June. There is less talking. More watching. The men stand closer to the machine, as if standing nearer will make the tape move faster. It does not. The tape moves at its own pace. It always has. You see Mr. Henderson most days. He is the man in the gray spats. He has been coming since January. He always arrives around 10:30 and stays until 3. He sits in the same chair by the window. He reads the newspaper and watches the tape. He rarely speaks to anyone. He tips his hat to the clerks when he passes. He is an older man, perhaps 55 or 60. He wears a dark suit and a gray hat. His shoes are always polished. His spats are always clean. He carries a leather portfolio under his arm. You do not know what is in it. You have never asked. You have carried margin C. All notices before. Not many, but a few. They are printed on thin yellow paper, folded in half, with a name and an account number written at the top. A runner usually carries them. Sometimes, when the runners are busy, you carry one up to the trading floor. You buy a bottle of lemon phosphate from the boy who comes around at noon. It costs 5 cents. It is sweet and cold and slightly fizzy. You drink it slowly, sitting on the steps outside the building. The sun is bright and hot. The street is quiet. Everyone has gone inside for lunch. You carry a margin call notice on Thursday afternoon. It is from the margin department. The door at the end of the hall opens just long enough for a clerk to hand it to you. The door closes again. You look down at the paper. The name at the top is Mr. Henderson. You stand there for a moment, holding the yellow paper. You have seen margin calls before. You have carried them before. But this is the first one you have ever seen with Mr. Henderson's name on it. He has been coming since January. He always sits in the same chair. He always wears gray spats. You walk up the stairs to the trading floor. The notice is folded in your hand. The paper is thin and slightly damp from your fingers. The stairs creak under your feet. The air grows warmer as you climb. The trading floor is louder and busier than the office below. Men shout across the room. Papers shuffle. Telephones ring. You walk along the edge of the floor, keeping to the wall, as clerks are supposed to do. You find the broker who handles Mr. Henderson's account and hand him the notice. He takes it without looking up. He is busy. You walk back down the stairs. The office is quieter. The fan is still humming. The ticker is still clicking. The heat is still everywhere. You sit back down at your board. You pick up the chalk. You post the next price. The number is lower than the last one. Just a little lower. The afternoon wears on. The sun moves slowly across the sky. The heat does not break. The tape keeps running late. The customers keep waiting. Everything moves at the same slow, heavy pace. Like the summer itself. Hot and still and endless. You think about the yellow paper. You think about Mr. Henderson. You wonder if he knows yet. You wonder what he will do. You do not know. You will probably find out tomorrow, when he comes in at 10:30 and sits in his chair by the window. You never find out what Mr. Henderson does about the margin call. He comes in the next day at his usual time. He sits in his usual chair. He reads his newspaper and watches the tape. He does not say anything to anyone. He does not look any different. He just sits there, quiet and steady, as he always has. September arrives. The heat breaks. The air grows cooler and sharper. The light changes too. It becomes paler, more golden, slanting through the windows at a lower angle. The summer is over. You can feel it in the way the mornings feel when you walk to work. The market moves up and down more sharply than before. In August, the numbers had climbed slowly, steadily, like the temperature. Now they jump around. One day they are up. The next day they are down. You never know what the tape will show when you arrive in the morning. The ticker runs later and later. On some days, it is an hour behind by noon. On the worst days, it runs 2 or even 3 hours behind the actual trading. The pile of tape on the floor grows higher and higher. The office boy makes 3 trips some days instead of 2. You hear the word rate mentioned more often in the corridor. You hear it when the brokers walk past your desk. You hear it when the runners carry messages. You hear it in the elevator and by the water cooler. No one explains what it means. No one seems to know for sure. You learn, gradually, that the Federal Reserve has raised its rate. The Federal Reserve is the central bank of the country. It controls the supply of money and the cost of borrowing. When it raises its rate, money becomes more expensive to borrow. Some people say this is good for the market. Some people say it is bad. No one seems entirely sure. You do not fully understand it. You do not need to. Your job is to post the prices. The reasons behind the numbers are someone else's concern. You write what the tape tells you. You do not ask why. The customer lounge is quieter now. The men still come. They still stand arrow. UND the ticker. But they talk less. They watch more. The air in the lounge feels heavier. Not with heat, not anymore. With something else. Something you cannot quite name. A kind of waiting. A gust of wind rattles the window panes one afternoon. It is the first real wind of autumn. It carries the smell of fallen leaves and cool air from the river. You look up from your board for a moment. The sky outside has turned a deep, sharp blue. The light is clear and bright. You see more margin call notices now. The yellow papers pass by your desk more frequently. The runners carry them up to the trading floor. Sometimes you carry one yourself. You do not read the names anymore. You just deliver them and go back to your board. Mr. Henderson still comes in every day. He still sits in his chair by the window. He still reads his newspaper and watches the tape. He still tips his hat to the clerks. You have not seen another margin call with his name on it. Not yet. The days grow shorter. The sun sets earlier each evening. The furnace downstairs comes on for a little while in the mornings. The office smells of coal smoke again, after being free of it all summer. It is a familiar smell. It reminds you of January, of the beginning of the year. You hear more conversations in the corridor. Small groups of brokers stand by the water cooler, talking in low voices. You catch fragments as you pass. Something about rates. Something about speculation. Something about whether it can go on. You do not stop to listen. You keep walking. Mr. Henderson watches the tape more closely now. He still sits in his chair, but he puts the newspaper down more often. He leans forward slightly when the tape moves quickly. You notice these small things. You do not know what they mean. You just notice them. The afternoon light fades slowly. The office grows quieter as the day wears on. The ticker clicks on, steady and unconcerned. The wind has died down outside. The city settles into its early autumn rhythm. The light turns soft and golden, then deepens to amber. It is perfectly all right if your eyes have grown heavy by now. The ticker tape will still be clicking when you return, and the story will wait patiently for you. The ticker keeps clicking. The light keeps fading. The office keeps breathing in its slow, steady way. Nothing needs to happen right now. Everything can wait. You stay at your post. The chalk moves across the board. The numbers come and go. The week passes, day by day. September moves toward its end. The last Friday of the month is a busy day. The market moves a lot. Up and down, more sharply than usual. The ticker falls behind almost immediately. By 10 o'clock, it is already half an hour late. By noon, it is an hour behind. The afternoon is worse. The tape keeps running and running, always catching up, never quite catching up. The customers in the lounge sit and sit again. No one leaves. Everyone waits. Everyone watches. Closing time comes and goes. The market officially closes at 3 o'clock. But the ticker keeps going. It keeps printing prices from earlier in the day. The numbers on the board are hours old by the time you write them. The office empties slowly. The customers leave one by one. The runners go home. The office manager puts on his coat and leaves. The partner's door closes and stays closed. Only a few people remain. The chief clerk. 1 or 2 brokers. You. You keep posting prices. The chalk wears down to a nub. You take a new piece from the tray. The ticker keeps clicking. The tape keeps piling up. The office grows quieter and quieter. The sun sets outside. The light through the windows turns from gold to gray to deep indigo. The electric lights in the office glow softly. The building is almost entirely silent now, except for the ticker and your chalk and the distant hum of the furnace coming back on for the evening. Nearly 2 hours after the market closes, the ticker finally slows. It prints the last of the day's prices. It clicks a few more times, as if making sure it has not missed anything. Then it goes quiet. You post the final numbers. You step back and look at the board. The numbers are all there. Every stock. Every price. The day is complete. You put down the chalk. You stretch your back. You look around the empty office. The desks are bare. The coats are gone. The chairs are pushed in. The only sound is the faint hum of the lights and the distant rumble of the city outside. You gather your things. You put on your coat. You walk to the door. You pause for a moment and look back at the ticker machine in the corner. It sits there, silent now, its tape coiled on the floor. Tomorrow it will start again. It always does. You turn out the light by your desk. You walk out into the corridor. The door closes softly behind you. The door closes softly behind you, and you walk down the dark corridor toward the elevator. The building is quiet at this hour. Most of the offices are dark. The elevator takes a long time to come. You stand there and wait, listening to the distant hum of the furnace far below. October arrives. The air grows colder. The mornings are crisp and sharp. You wear your overcoat to work now. You leave it hanging on the peg by your desk all day. The office is still warm from the furnace, but the air near the windows is cool. You can feel it on your face when you sit too close to the glass. The first week of October brings a change. Prices drift lower most days. Not by much. Not dramatically. Just a little lower each morning than they were the evening before. The numbers on the board creep downward, slowly, steadily, like water finding a lower level. You do not think about what it means. You just write them down. The customer lounge is still full. The men still come. They still stand around the ticker and watch the tape. But the room is quieter than it was in September. There is less talking. Less laughter. Fewer stories. The men watch the numbers with a kind of quiet attention. The ticker tape feels heavier now. It still clicks at the same speed, but the numbers on it feel different. They feel slower, somehow. More deliberate. You cannot explain it. You just feel it, in the way the chalk moves across the board, in the rhythm of your day. Margin call notices go out more frequently now. The yellow papers pass by your desk every day. Sometimes several in a single morning. The runners carry them up to the trading floor. Their steps are quicker than they were in summer. They move faster. They talk less. You carry 3 margin calls on Tuesday alone. The first one goes up at 10 o'clock. The second at noon. The third at 2:30. You walk up the stairs each time, the folded yellow paper in your hand. The trading floor is busier than usual. More shouting. More movement. You deli. Ver the notices and walk back down. You do not read the names on the notices anymore. You used to glance at them, out of curiosity. Now you just carry them. You have stopped wondering who they are for. You have stopped wondering what they mean. You just deliver them and go back to your board. On Monday, the tape is an hour behind by mid-morning. By lunchtime, it is 2 hours behind. The customers stand and wait. No one complains. No one leaves. They just stand there, watching the tape, waiting for the numbers to catch up. A cold rain begins on Wednesday morning. It falls steadily, fine and sharp, tapping against the windows. The light is gray and flat. The office feels smaller somehow. The sounds are closer. The ticker clicks louder. The footsteps echo more. The runners move faster than they did in summer. They used to walk. Now they almost jog. Their shoes slap against the wooden floor. They carry stacks of paper in their arms. They do not stop to talk. They do not look at the board. They just move, quickly and quietly, from one place to another. You notice the change in pace. It is subtle. No one has said anything about it. No one has announced anything. But everyone seems to be moving a little faster. Talking a little less. Watching a little more. It is like the air itself has grown heavier, and everyone is pushing through it. Mr. Henderson comes in every morning as usual. He still sits in his chair by the window. He still reads his newspaper and watches the tape. But he puts the paper down more often now. He watches the tape more closely. He stays later some days. He does not leave at 3 o'clock anymore. You see him standing by the ticker once or twice. He is usually sitting. Standing is unusual for him. He leans slightly forward, his hands behind his back, watching the tape go by. He does not speak to anyone. He just watches. Friday morning is quiet. The rain has stopped, but the sky is still gray. The air is cold and clean. You arrive at your usual time. You hang your coat. You seat yourself at your stool. You pick up your chalk. You wait for the market to open. The ticker starts at 10 o'clock. The first prices appear. They are lower again. Not by much. Just a little. You write them on the board. The chalk makes its usual soft scratching sound. The office hums with its usual morning activity. Around 10:30, the door opens. Mr. Henderson walks in. He is wearing his usual dark suit and gray spats. He is carrying his leather portfolio. He looks the same as always. But something is different. He walks directly to the customer desk, not to his chair. He speaks to the clerk behind the desk. His voice is low and calm. You cannot hear the words. He opens his portfolio and takes out a small book. He hands it to the clerk. The clerk looks at it. The clerk nods. The clerk takes a form from a drawer and slides it across the desk. Mr. Henderson picks up a pen. He dips it in the inkwell. He signs the form. He hands it back. He closes his portfolio. He puts it under his arm. He turns and walks toward the door. He passes your board on his way out. He looks up for a moment. His eyes meet yours. He tips his hat, slightly, the way he always does. You nod back. The corner of his mouth moves, almost imperceptibly. It might have been a smile. It might have been nothing. He walks out the door. The door closes behind him. You stand there with your chalk in your hand. You look at the door. You wait for him to come back. He does not come back. You do not see him again. Not that day. Not the next day. Not the day after that. His chair by the window stays empty. The newspaper he used to read is gone. The leather portfolio is gone. The man in gray spats is gone. You go back to posting prices. The ticker keeps clicking. The numbers keep moving. The office goes about its business. Everything continues. And yet something has changed. Quietly. Slowly. Like the way autumn turns to winter. You do not notice it happening until it has already happened. The afternoon wears on. The rain starts again, soft and steady. The light fades early. The office grows dim. The runners come and go. The customers watch the tape. Everything moves at its own quiet, heavy pace. You think about Mr. Henderson sometimes, when you are posting prices. You wonder where he went. You wonder what he will do now. You wonder if he will come back. You do not know the answers. You just keep writing. The ticker clicks on. The rain falls. The office breathes. October moves forward, one day at a time. The empty chair by the window stays in your mind for the rest of that week. You glance at it from time to time, half expecting to see him sitting there again. He does not come. The chair stays empty. The newspaper stays gone. The man in gray spats does not return. Mid-October arrives. The weather turns colder. The wind blows harder off the river. You wear your overcoat all the way to work now, and you keep it near your desk, in case you need it again before the day is done. The furnace downstairs runs longer each morning. The decline accelerates. Prices drift lower, faster than they did in the first week of October. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just steadily, hour by hour, day by day. You post lower numbers every morning, and they keep going down through the afternoon. The ticker falls further and further behind. On Monday, it is 2 hours behind by noon. On Tuesday, it is 3 hours behind. The tape keeps printing and printing, always catching up, never quite catching up. The numbers you write on the board are old by the time you write them. They are already lower than what you see on the tape. Messengers hurry in and out of the partner's office. The door at the end of the hall opens and closes, all day long. Men in dark suits come and go. They carry briefcases. They speak in low voices. You do not know who they are. You do not know what they want. Your chalk wears down fast. You go through a piece every couple of hours now. You used to make a piece last half a day. Now it lasts 2 hours, maybe 3 if the market is quiet. The tray at the base of the board is always full of chalk dust and broken nubs. You keep a dozen extra pieces in your desk drawer, just in case. You post lower numbers every hour. You erase the old numbers and write the new ones. The chalk dust falls like fine snow onto the tray below. Your hand moves quickly, more quickly than it used to. You do not stop to think. You just write. The customer lounge is still full, but it is very quiet now. The men do not talk much. They stand around the ticker and watch the tape go by. Some of them take notes. Some of them just stand there. No one tells stories anymore. No one laughs. The room is full of people and full of silence. A cold wind blows against the windows one afternoon. It whistles around the corners of the building. It carries the smell of rain and fallen leaves and cold river water. You look up from your board for a moment. The sky outside is dark and heavy. The light is gray and flat. The runners move faster than ever. They almost run now. Their shoes slap against the wooden floor. They carry stacks of paper in their arms. They do not stop for anything. They do not say hello. They do not make eye contact. They just move, quickly and quietly, from one place to another. You notice the change in the office. It is not just the pace. It is something else. A kind of tension in the air. A feeling that everyone is waiting for something. You cannot name it. You can just feel it. In the way people walk. In the way they talk. In the silence between the sounds. The partner's door opens more often now. You used to see it open once or twice a day. Now it opens 10 times, maybe more. Men come and go. Papers are carried in and out. The voices behind the door are lower than usual. You cannot hear what they are saying. You can just hear that they are talking. You walk down to the water cooler on Thursday afternoon. Your throat is dry from breathing chalk dust all day. You fill your cup and take a drink. The water is cool and sharp. 2 partners are standing by the cooler, speaking in low voices. You have seen them before. One is older, with white hair and a round face. The other is younger, taller, with a mustache. They do not see you at first. They are too busy talking. You stop a few feet away, holding your cup. You do not mean to listen. You are just waiting for them to move so you can fill your cup again. But you cannot help but hear fragments of what they are saying. The older one says something about the market. He says it quietly, quickly. The younger one nods. He says something in return. You do not catch all of it. You are not trying to. But one word reaches you clearly, sharp and clear, in the older man's voice. Bankers. The word hangs in the air for a moment. Then the younger man nods again, slowly, seriously. He says something else, too low to hear. The older man says something back. They both look at the floor. Neither looks at you. You stand there for a moment, holding your cup. You do not move. You do not speak. You just stand there, listening to the low murmur of their voices, watching the water drip from the edge of your cup. Then they notice you. The older man looks up. His eyes meet yours for a brief moment. He does not smile. He does not nod. He just looks. Then he turns back to the younger man and continues speaking, even more quietly than before. You walk back to your desk. You set your cup down. You pick up your chalk. You go back to posting prices. The numbers are lower again. Just a little lower. UWR. Write them on the board. The chalk makes its usual soft scratching sound. You think about the word. Bankers. You do not know what it means. You do not know why they were saying it. You do not know what it has to do with the numbers on the board. You just know that you heard it. And you know that the way they said it felt different from the way people usually talk in the corridor. The afternoon wears on. The wind dies down. The sky stays dark. The ticker keeps clicking. The chalk keeps scratching. The partner's door opens and closes. Everything continues. And yet something feels heavier. Slower. More quiet. You post the last of the day's prices. The ticker is still running. It will keep running for another hour, maybe more. You put down your chalk. You stretch your back. You look at the board. All the numbers are lower than they were this morning. All of them. You gather your things. You put on your coat. You walk to the door. You pause for a moment and look back at the empty chair by the window. It is still empty. It will probably stay empty. You turn off the light by your desk. You walk out into the corridor. The door closes softly behind you. The door closes softly behind you, and you walk down the dark corridor toward the elevator. The building is quiet at this hour. The word stays with you, though. Bankers. You turn it over in your mind as you walk. You do not know what it means. You just know you heard it. A Thursday in late October. The morning is cold and gray. You walk to work with your collar turned up against the wind. The sky is low and heavy. It feels like it might rain. It does not rain. It just stays gray and cold and still. The morning is unusually active. The tape runs late from the opening bell. By 10:30, it is already an hour behind. By 11, it is an hour and a half behind. The ticker clicks faster than usual. The paper piles up on the floor. The office boy makes extra trips to empty the basket. Prices slide. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just steadily, hour by hour. You post lower numbers every time you look up. The chalk moves quickly across the board. Your hand moves faster than it did last week. Faster than it did last month. The customer lounge is full and quiet. The men stand close to the ticker, watching the tape go by. No one talks. No one tells stories. The only sounds are the ticker, the rustle of newspapers, and the soft shuffle of feet on the carpet. The trading floor upstairs is louder than usual. You can hear it through the ceiling. Shouts. Papers. Telephones. The floor has been quiet for the past few weeks. Not today. Today it is busy. Busier than you have ever heard it. You carry a stack of messages up to the trading floor at mid-morning. The room is full of movement. Men shout across the floor. Runners dart between desks. Papers fly back and forth. The air smells of cigar smoke and sweat and ink. You deliver your messages and walk back down. Your ears ring a little from the noise. Then, around midday, something shifts. You do not know what. You cannot point to a single moment. But gradually, Almost without noticing, the rhythm of the day changes. The ticker still clicks. The tape still prints. But the numbers on it are different. Large buy orders appear. You see them on the tape. Big blocks of stock, bought all at once. You do not know who is buying. You do not know why. You just see the numbers. The prices stop going down. They start going up. Prices move back up. Slowly at first. Then a little faster. You erase the lower numbers and write higher ones. The chalk moves in the opposite direction from the morning. You have not done that in a while. It feels strange. Almost unfamiliar. By afternoon, the worst of the morning's decline has been recovered. The numbers on the board are not as high as they were at the beginning of the week. But they are much higher than they were at 11 o'clock. The slide from the morning has been, for the most part, undone. No one explains it. No one comes out of the partner's office to tell the clerks what happened. No one makes an announcement. The prices just go up. And everyone watches. And no one says why. The afternoon light fades slowly. The office grows quieter. The ticker clicks on, steady and regular. The wind has died down outside. The city breathes in its late October rhythm. If you have drifted away somewhere between the lines of ticker tape, that is exactly where you ought to be. You need not catch every number. The prices will keep. The ticker keeps clicking. The light keeps fading. The office keeps breathing in its slow, steady way. Nothing needs to be understood right now. Everything can wait. You stay at your post. The chalk moves across the board. The numbers come and go. The afternoon wears on. The day moves toward its end. The trading floor grows quieter too. The shouting dies down. The runners slow down. The telephones ring less often. By mid-afternoon, the floor is almost calm. Not as quiet as it was last week, but quieter than the morning. Quieter than you expected. You walk back from the back office late in the afternoon. You are carrying a stack of ledgers to file. The corridor is quiet. The light is dim. The furnace hums somewhere far below. You pass the partner's room on your way back. The door is ajar. Just slightly. Not enough to see inside. Enough to hear a voice. You hear a name you recognize from the financial pages. The House of Morgan. You stop walking. You stand there for a moment, holding the ledgers. You listen. You want to hear more. You want to know what they are saying. The door closes. Softly. Quietly. Before you hear another word. You stand there for a moment longer. The ledgers are heavy in your arms. The corridor is silent. The partner's door is closed. You continue walking. You file the ledgers in the back office. You walk back to your desk. You pick up your chalk. You go back to posting prices. You think about the name. The House of Morgan. You have read about it in the newspaper. You have heard people mention it in the lounge. It is the biggest bank in the country. Maybe the biggest in the world. You do not know what it has to do with today's prices. You do not know why the partners were saying the name. You just know you heard it. The ticker clicks on. The light fades. The office grows quiet. The day comes to an end. You post the last of the closing prices. You put down your chalk. You stretch your back. You look at the board. The numbers are higher than they were this morning. Much higher. No one knows why. No one says. You gather your things. You put on your coat. You walk to the door. You pause for a moment and look back at the partner's door at the end of the hall. It is closed. It stays closed. You turn off the light by your desk. You walk out into the corridor. The door closes softly behind you. The door closes softly behind you, and you walk down the dark corridor toward the elevator. The name stays with you, though. The House of Morgan. You turn it over in your mind as you walk. You do not know what it means. You just know you heard it. Monday arrives. The weekend passes quietly, without incident. You go to the automat for lunch on Saturday. You walk along the river on Sunday. You try not to think about the numbers. You mostly succeed. Monday morning comes, and you walk to work as you always do. The morning is cold and clear. The sky is a sharp, bright blue. The wind blows from the north. You can feel winter coming. You wear your overcoat and your gloves. Your breath makes small white clouds in the air. From the opening bell, the tape is behind. Not by much at first. Just a few minutes. But it grows quickly. By 10 o'clock, it is half an hour behind. By 10:30, it is an hour behind. The ticker clicks steadily, but it cannot keep up. Prices slide steadily. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just hour by hour, lower and lower. You post lower numbers every time you look up. The chalk moves quickly across the board. Your hand moves faster than it did last week. The customer lounge is silent. No one talks. No one tells stories. No one reads the newspaper. Everyone stands around the ticker and watches the tape go by. The room is full of people and full of silence. You can hear the ticker from all the way across the room. You post lower and lower numbers. Each time you look up from the tape, the board has moved further. The numbers you wrote an hour ago are already out of date. They are already higher than what the tape is showing now. You erase and rewrite, all morning long. The chalk wears down fast. You go through 3 pieces before lunch. The tray at the base of the board is full of dust and broken nubs. You keep extra pieces in your pocket now, so you do not have to walk to the drawer every time. The trading floor upstairs is loud. Why? Oh, you can hear it through the ceiling. Shouts. Papers. Telephones. It is louder than last Thursday. Louder than you have ever heard it. The floor has not been this busy since the summer. Maybe not even then. A cold wind blows against the windows. It rattles the glass. It carries the smell of smoke and cold air and distant river water. You look up for a moment. The sky is still blue, but it has grown paler. The light is sharper. Colder. The runners move faster than ever. They run now. Not almost run. Actually run. Their shoes slap against the wooden floor. They carry stacks of paper in their arms. They do not stop for anything. They do not say hello. They do not make eye contact. They just move, quickly and quietly, from one place to another. You notice the silence in the lounge. It is different from the quiet of last week. Last week, there was still a kind of waiting. A kind of hope. This week, the silence feels heavier. Final somehow. You cannot explain it. You just feel it. The afternoon is worse. The tape falls further and further behind. By 2 o'clock, it is 2 hours behind. By 3 o'clock, it is 3 hours behind. The ticker keeps clicking and clicking, always catching up, never quite catching up. Prices keep going down. You erase and rewrite, erase and rewrite. The numbers on the board are always old. Always behind. Always lower than what is actually happening on the floor. You do not know how low they have really gone. You only know what the tape tells you. And the tape is always late. The customer lounge is still full. No one leaves. Everyone stays and watches. The silence is complete now. No one coughs. No one clears their throat. No one shifts their weight. Everyone just stands there and watches the tape. Closing time comes and goes. The market officially closes at 3 o'clock. But the ticker keeps going. It keeps printing prices from earlier in the day. The numbers on the board are hours old by the time you write them. The office empties slowly. The customers leave one by one. The runners go home. The office manager puts on his coat and leaves. The partner's door closes and stays closed. Only a few people remain. The chief clerk. 1 or 2 brokers. You. You keep posting prices. The chalk wears down to a nub. You take a new piece from your pocket. The ticker keeps clicking. The tape keeps piling up. The office grows quieter and quieter. The sun sets outside. The light through the windows turns from gold to gray to deep indigo. The electric lights in the office glow softly. The building is almost entirely silent now, except for the ticker and your chalk and the distant hum of the furnace. Well, after closing time, the ticker finally slows. It prints the last of the day's prices. It clicks a few more times, as if making sure it has not missed anything. Then it goes quiet. You post the final numbers. You step back and look at the board. All the numbers are lower. Much lower. Lower than they were this morning. Lower than they were last week. Lower than you have ever seen them. At the end of the day, the chief clerk walks through the office. He is an older man, with gray hair and a precise way of walking. He stops at each desk. He tells each person to come in early tomorrow. He does not say why. He just says to come in early. He says it calmly, quietly, the way he says everything. No one asks. No one says anything. Everyone just nods. He stops at your desk. He tells you to come in early tomorrow. You nod. He moves on. He walks to the next desk. You hear his footsteps recede down the corridor. You put down the chalk. You stretch your back. You look around the empty office. The desks are bare. The coats are gone. The chairs are pushed in. The only sound is the faint hum of the lights and the distant rumble of the city outside. You gather your things. You put on your coat. You walk to the door. You pause for a moment and look back at the board. All the numbers are lower. All of them. You turn off the light by your desk. You walk out into the corridor. The door closes softly behind you. The door closes softly behind you, and you walk down the dark corridor toward the elevator. The chief clerk's words stay with you. Come in early tomorrow. You do not know what it means. You just know you will be there. You arrive before dawn. The sky is still dark. The street is quiet. Most of the buildings are dark. You walk up the steps of the brokerage house and pull open the heavy door. The lobby is dimly lit. The elevator operator is already there, waiting. The office is already lit. You are not the first one here. Several clerks are already at their desks. The runners are standing by the door, waiting. The chief clerk is in his office, the door open. No one speaks. Everyone just waits. The ticker starts at the opening bell. The tape is behind from the first minute. Not a few minutes. Not half an hour. It is behind from the very start. The prices on the tape are already old by the time they appear. You do not know how far behind. It is hard to tell. Prices fall. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just steadily, hour by hour, lower and lower. You post lower numbers every time you look up. The chalk moves quickly across the board. Your hand moves faster than it did yesterday. Faster than it did last week. The room is full but completely still. The customer lounge is packed. Men stand shoulder to shoulder around the ticker. No one talks. No one moves. No one coughs. Everyone just watches the tape. The silence is absolute. You can hear the ticker from across the room. You can hear your own breath. You post numbers you did not think you would see. Numbers far lower than anything from the summer. Numbers lower than last spring. Numbers lower, even, than the beginning of the year. You write them on the board, one after another. You do not stop to think. You just write. Your chalk wears down to a nub. You go through piece after piece. You keep a handful in your pocket. You reach for a new one without looking. The tray at the base of the board is overflowing with dust. ND broken pieces. The office boy comes by twice to empty it. The trading floor upstairs is very loud. You can hear it through the ceiling. Shouts. Papers. Telephones. It is louder than yesterday. Louder than you have ever heard it. The sound fills the building. It vibrates through the floor. It hums in the walls. A cold gray light fills the windows as the morning wears on. The sun does not really come up. It just gets lighter, a little at a time. The sky stays gray. The wind blows against the glass. The light is flat and pale and cold. The runners move faster than ever. They run from desk to desk, from floor to floor. Their shoes slap against the wooden floor. They carry stacks of paper in their arms. They do not stop for anything. They do not say hello. They do not make eye contact. They just move, quickly and quietly, from one place to another. The afternoon is worse. The tape falls further and further behind. By 2 o'clock, it is hours behind. By 3 o'clock, it is even further. The ticker keeps clicking and clicking, always catching up, never quite catching up. Prices keep going down. You erase and rewrite, erase and rewrite. The numbers on the board are always old. Always behind. Always lower than what is actually happening on the floor. You do not know how low they have really gone. You only know what the tape tells you. And the tape is always late. The customer lounge is still full. No one leaves. Everyone stays and watches. The silence is complete now. No one coughs. No one clears their throat. No one shifts their weight. Everyone just stands there and watches the tape. Closing time comes. 3 o'clock. The market officially closes. The ticker keeps going. It keeps printing prices from earlier in the day. The numbers on the board are hours old by the time you write them. At closing time, no one speaks. The office is completely silent. The partners stay in their office. The door stays closed. No one comes out. No one makes an announcement. The runners stand by the door, waiting. They do not leave. They do not sit down. They just stand there, holding their stacks of paper, waiting for something. You do not know what. They do not know either. They just wait. You put down your chalk. You step back from the board. You look at the numbers. All of them. Row after row. Column after column. The numbers are very different from the ones you posted in January. Far lower. Much lower. You try to remember what the board looked like at the beginning of the year. You try to remember the numbers from January. They seem like a long time ago. They seem like a different world. No one turns off the ticker. It keeps clicking, alone, in the corner. The tape keeps piling up on the floor. The machine keeps going, as if nothing has changed. As if the day is not over. As if there are still more numbers to print. The office is very quiet now. The only sound is the ticker. Click. 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 Steady and regular. Unconcerned. Indifferent. It does not know what the numbers mean. It does not care. It just prints. You stand there for a long time, looking at the board. The numbers stare back at you. White chalk on dark wood. Row after row. All lower. All different from January. The light fades outside. The sky turns from gray to dark gray to deep indigo. The electric lights in the office glow softly. The building is almost entirely silent now, except for the ticker and the distant hum of the furnace. You do not know what tomorrow will bring. You do not know what will happen next. You just know that the day is over. And the numbers on the board are what they are. And the ticker keeps clicking, alone, in the corner. You gather your things. You put on your coat. You walk to the door. You pause for a moment and look back at the ticker machine. It keeps clicking. It keeps printing. It does not stop. You turn off the light by your desk. You walk out into the corridor. The door closes softly behind you. The door closes softly behind you, and you walk down the dark corridor toward the elevator. The ticker's clicking stays in your ears for a long time after. Click. 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 Steady and regular. Alone in the corner. November arrives. The weather turns colder. The wind blows harder off the river. You wear your overcoat all the way to work now, and you keep it near your desk. The furnace downstairs runs all day. The office smells of coal smoke and warm air. The market settles at a lower level. Prices do not go down much anymore. They do not go up much either. They just stay there, at this new lower place. You post the numbers every day. They are more or less the same. Not exactly the same. But close enough. The office is quieter. There are fewer people. Fewer footsteps. Fewer voices. Fewer papers shuffling. The building feels bigger somehow. More empty. You can hear the furnace from your desk now. You could not hear it before. Some desks are empty. 3 runners were let go last week. You do not know why. No one says. You just come in one morning, and their desks are bare. Their coats are gone. Their chairs are pushed in. The space where they used to stand is quiet. The customer lounge has fewer people in it. Not empty. Not yet. But fewer. The men who come still stand around the ticker. They still watch the tape. But there is more space between them. More room. More silence. You still post prices every day. It is your job. You come in. You hang your coat. You sit at your stool. You pick up your chalk. You wait for the tape to start. You write the numbers. You do it every day. The same way. The same rhythm. But the tape runs on time now. It has been a long time since it fell behind. Not since that Tuesday. Not since the day the numbers kept going. Now the tape keeps pace. The numbers you write are the numbers that are happening. Right now. Not an hour ago. Not 2 hours ago. Right now. Your chalk lasts longer now. A piece lasts half a day again. Sometimes longer. The tray at the base of the board is not as full of dust. The office boy comes by once a day to empty it. That is enough. A cold rain falls one afternoon. It taps against the windows. It runs down the glass in thin streams. The sky is gray and heavy. The light is dim. The office feels smaller somehow. Closer. Quieter. You notice the empty desks sometimes. You glance at them when you walk past. They are neat. Clean. Nothing out of place. It is as if the people who sat there were never there. As if they had been erased. You do not think about it too much. It is not your place to think about these things. Your job is to post prices. That is what you do. That is all you do. The days grow shorter. The sun sets earlier each evening. The mornings are darker. You walk to work in the half-light. The street lamps are still on. The city is still waking up. The afternoon light fades slowly. The office grows quieter. The ticker clicks on, slow and steady. The rain taps against the windows. The furnace hums somewhere far below. The year is nearly done, and so is this story. Whatever remains to be said can wait for another night. Rest now. The tape has slowed, and so too may you. The ticker keeps clicking. The rain keeps falling. The furnace keeps humming. Nothing needs to happen right now. Everything can wait. You stay at your post. The chalk moves slowly across the board. The numbers come and go. The afternoon wears on. November moves toward its end. You hear something from the elevator operator one afternoon. You are coming back from lunch. You step into the elevator. He says something. Just a passing comment. Nothing important. He says 2 firms down the street have closed their doors. Just like that. One morning they are there. The next morning they are not. The doors are locked. The signs are gone. The people who worked there are gone too. You do not know whether it is true. You have not seen anything. You have not heard anything else. It could be just gossip. It could be true. You do not know. No one in your office mentions it. No one talks about firms closing. No one talks about empty desks. No one talks about much of anything these days. The office is quiet. Everyone does their work. Everyone goes home. You think about it sometimes, when you are posting prices. You wonder if it is true. You wonder what happens to the people who worked there. You wonder where they go. You do not know the answers. You just keep writing. The ticker clicks on. The rain falls. The furnace hums. The office breathes in its slow, quiet way. November moves forward, one day at a time. You post the last of the day's prices. You put down your chalk. You stretch your back. You look at the board. The numbers are there. All of them. Lower than January. Lower than the summer. But steady. Quiet. Still. You gather your things. You put on your coat. You walk to the door. You pause for a moment and look back at the empty desks. They are still empty. They will probably stay empty. You turn off the light by your desk. You walk out into the corridor. The door closes softly behind you. The door closes softly behind you, and you walk down the dark corridor toward the elevator. The empty desks stay in your mind for a long time after. Neat. Clean. As if the people who sat there were never there. The last trading day of December arrives. A light snow falls outside. You walk to work with your collar turned up. The snow lands on your hat and your shoulders. The street is quiet. The snow muffles the sounds of the city. Footsteps are softer. Wheels are quieter. Everything is wrapped in white. The office is quiet when you arrive. Quieter than usual. There are fewer people. Some have already left for the holidays. Some will not be coming back. You do not know which ones. You just notice the empty desks. You hang your coat. You sit at your stool. You pick up your chalk. You wait for the tape to start. The ticker clicks to life. The paper begins to move. The last day of the year has begun. You post the final closing prices of the year. One by one. Row by row. The numbers come in steadily. The tape runs on time, as it has for weeks. There is no rush. No urgency. The day moves slowly, the way December days move. The numbers are far below where they were in September. Far below the summer highs. Far below the autumn days when the tape ran hours behind. The board looks different now. Quieter. Calmer. Lower. You think about January. You think about the first day you came to work this year. You think about the numbers on the board that morning. You try to remember what they were. It is hard to remember exactly. They are not so different from where they were in January, if you look at it a certain way. Not exactly the same. Not quite. But close. Close enough that you could almost believe the year never happened. Almost. You clean your chalk tray at the end of the day. You brush the dust into the wastebasket. You wipe your hands on your trousers. You arrange the remaining pieces of chalk neatly in the tray. You do it slowly. Carefully. The way you always do on the law. St. Day. The snow falls harder outside. It covers the rooftops and the streets and the window sills. The light through the windows is soft and white. The office glows with a quiet, winter light. Everything feels softer. Slower. Gentler. The ticker slows down as closing time approaches. It prints the last of the day's prices. It prints the last of the year's prices. Then it goes quiet. The last tick of the year. The last click. Silence. You put down your chalk. You step back from the board. You look at the numbers one last time. All of them. Row after row. Column after column. The last prices of 1929. You put on your coat. You button it up. You put on your hat. You pull on your gloves. You gather your things. You walk to the door. You pause for a moment and look back at the office. The desks are mostly empty. The lights are dim. The ticker machine sits silent in the corner. The chalkboard stands against the wall, covered in numbers. A whole year of numbers. A whole year of prices. A whole year of coming and going. You walk out into the snow. The cold air hits your face. The snow lands on your hat and your eyelashes. The street is quiet. The snow muffles everything. Footsteps. Voices. The distant rumble of the elevated train. All of it is softer now. All of it is wrapped in white. You walk home through the quiet streets. You pass the automat where you ate lunch all summer. It is still there. The windows glow warm inside. You can see people sitting at the counters. You remember eating baked beans and pie there in June. You remember the heat and the noise and the stories. It seems like a long time ago. You wonder, quietly, without urgency, what next year's tape will bring. You do not know. No one knows. The numbers will come in, one by one, same as always. The chalk will move across the board. The ticker will click. The year will unfold, day by day, price by price. You keep walking. The snow falls around you. The street is quiet. The city is wrapped in white. The year is over. And the next one is waiting, just around the corner. You turn onto your street. You walk up the steps to your boarding house. You open the door. You step inside. The warmth of the hallway wraps around you. You take off your hat. You shake the snow from your coat. You walk up the stairs to your room. You light the lamp. You sit on the edge of the bed. You take off your shoes. The room is small and quiet and warm. Outside, the snow keeps falling. Softly. Steadily. Covering everything. The year is done. The tape has stopped. The numbers are written. And tomorrow, or the day after, or whenever the new year begins, it will start all over again. New numbers. New prices. New days. For now, though, there is only the snow. And the quiet. And the soft, steady sound of it falling outside your window.